Hey guys, welcome back. You know, we're going to do another one of these Motorweek Retro reviews of a car that I personally have not owned, but it's a car my mother-in-law has, and I've worked on it for the last 15 years and driven it plenty of times, enough to know what I think about the car as compared to this new review. So let's see what it says.
The subject of this week's road test by request is a real breakthrough car for General Motors and Oldsmobile. This striking Aurora is a...
If you look at the front end of this car, it has no grille. Now, that wasn't only the thing that the Aurora had. That was a very 90s type of style where they would smooth out the front end with no grille for a new type of style. And all the air came out from underneath of the bumper. It was sucked in through the bumper through like a funnel. The only problem with that mechanically is, have you ever seen somebody drive up onto a curb and have to scrape their bumper and you hear a scraping sound? Well, what happens when you take your bumper and you do that, but you break the plastic pieces underneath that funnel the air up to the radiator? Well, because of that, that's why a lot of 90s cars were prone to overheat. So stylistically, I like it, but as a mechanic, fundamentally, I would have to say I'm not a fan.
complete departure from anything that Olds has sold before. And it's a great car too, holding its own with top competitors from Japan and Germany.
The headlights I really like in contrast with the fog lights down below. I think that they help to look cohesive so that the front end is flush.
Why it impressed us so much that we gave it our 1995 Driver's Choice Award for Best Luxury Sedan. Plus, we keep going mile after trouble-free mile in our long-term Aurora. It just keeps going and going and going. And going is a word that well describes this most fluid-looking of all Oldsmobiles. Indeed, the Aurora...
Like I said, stylistically, I really do like the front end of these cars from the 90s, but as a person that has to work on them, overheating problems are something that's real with 90s cars. And I think that's why if you look today, you don't see cars like this anymore. Every car has a grille, or to the point like BMW or Lexus where the grilles are massive. But this whole fluid front end went away, you know, after the 90s decade.
It seems to be in motion at all times, even when standing still, thanks to its graceful sweeping shape. Here's proof that there's no reason why an Oldsmobile sedan has to be stopped.
You know, I like the wheels on this car too. And I like how if you look at the front and the front fenders and the rear quarter panels, they look like there's a little bit of a flare to them. It's kind of muscular. I like that.
Dodgy. You won't find an egg crate grille or any other previous old styling cue. You won't even find an Oldsmobile Rocket anywhere.
My mother-in-law's car is a dark maroon. I really do like this color better. I think it complements the car.
On the sheet metal. This stylized A serves as Aurora's luxury logo. But the huge oval tail lamp bar...
Okay, I made a statement in my last video that I like the light bars that go from taillight to taillight. I really do like this look. My buddy has a 14 or a 15 Dodge Charger, and the actual light bar itself illuminates when you turn the headlights on. I really like that. I think that these really complement certain cars. Not all cars need a light bar, but I think it complements some cars.
Is more likely to become Aurora's signature. You'll know an Aurora when you're behind one. Under Aurora's equally unique hood lies the real go, a V8 engine for the 90s, specifically an all-aluminum 4-liter unit featuring 32 valves and dual overhead camshaft.
Okay, these were really complicated motors. You know, I have a love-hate relationship with this motor because I've had to work on it. Cadillac had the North Star engine, and that was the big trick V8 that they had in the 90s. This one is a smaller version of that same engine. They called it the Short Star. You know, these motors were incredibly unreliable, and most mechanics will tell you that's true. You know, if you have an engine, you have the block on the bottom, and then you have the heads as they come together, and they're bolted together with a gasket in between known as the head gasket. Well, these motors had a problem with the head bolts coming out of the aluminum head backing up and backing out on their own, which would cause the head gasket to blow, which would cause overheating, and it could cause the engine to fail. But if it hadn't been for these North Star motors failing, we would have never gotten GM's crown jewel, the LS motor, which everybody puts in every car that they build. So as it's not a great engine, we have to remember that without it, we wouldn't have a great engine in the LS.
If you've guessed that this is a slightly smaller version of Cadillac's North Star V8, you're right. But it still delivers a robust 250 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque to the front wheels. A 4-speed electronic automatic is
the automatic transmission in this. I can't speak for everyone, but I know my mother-in-law and father-in-law had to replace theirs in the first 6 years of ownership. The other thing is, GM had a couple of cars with V8s over the front wheels, driving the front wheels. You don't see that very often. In front-wheel drive cars, you see 6 cylinders or 4 cylinders. You very seldom see an 8-cylinder car that's front-wheel drive, because in a front-wheel drive car, you have the engine and the transmission together over the front wheels. In a rear-wheel drive car, you have the engine over the front wheels, and the transmission is usually between the front seats. So on a front-wheel drive car, it ends up putting a lot of weight over the front end, which isn't great for handling.
the only transmission. It offers the driver a choice of performance or normal shift modes, and the standard.
I'm sure we'll see it in the video, though. I do know that my mother-in-law's Aurora did handle pretty well.
Traction control has a driver override. In our test mode, we managed 0 to 60 times of 8.8 seconds. You feel every pound of Aurora's two-ton.
Yeah, 8.8 is nothing to write home about. But I will say, that car, when you drive it, you can feel how heavy it is. I do believe that the Aurora might be as heavy or heavier than my father-in-law's Jaguar.
On luxury. However, there is a strong reserve of power midway through the rev band, perfect for passing, that helped the quarter-mile breeze by in 16.7 seconds with a trap speed of 84 miles per hour. Shifts are crisp yet effortless. We love the V8's rumbling exhaust note. While past Oldsmobiles were known for V8 power, handling wasn't always their strong suit. Aurora's four-wheel independent suspension.
Having an independent suspension in the front and the rear of the car really does help it handle better, even if it's this heavy.
Speed-sensitive steering and the most rigid body in GM history changes that. Our drivers praised its quick turn-in, mild and predictable understeer, and fine steering feel and grip. Only in the high-speed lane change did the Aurora not inspire our complete confidence.
If you look at how the car went through the cones, there's a little bit of body roll, but not a lot. Most heavy cars, they roll from side to side when you're going through the cones. This one doesn't do that as often, and I think that's because of the independent suspension.
Whereas here again, you feel mostly its weight. Helping all our maneuvers were our car's only option, sticky V-rated 60 Series 16-inch performance tires.
Okay, the only option they got with the car were these sticky summer tires. I don't think that that was a good idea, because it doesn't give a real tell of how the car handles in real life, because people have all weather tires. You know, if you think about it, except for New Mexico, Arizona, or Southern California, we have rain, we have snow. So I would have liked the test to have been with all-weather tires so that you actually could figure out whether you wanted the car or not, because here in Iowa, my mom and my sister live in Kansas. You need all-weather tires. Summer tires don't work for a car that you drive year-round.
Aurora brakes are four-wheel disc with a standard anti-lock system. They produce a good average stopping distance of 120 feet from 60, with no fade, a firm pedal.
That's 120 feet is actually really good considering how heavy this car is. And in fact, it would be good for a car that weighed less. So I really think that those are superb brakes.
Feel and only moderate nosedive. As you'd expect, there's nothing moderate about Aurora's level.
Okay, this interior, now I'm not going to say that the plastics were of Lexus or Acura quality by any means, but they were much better than most GM plastics. They held up a lot longer and they looked a lot better. But I will say this. If you look at the cabin, it doesn't really show it unless there's people in it. But man, this is a cramped interior. For a car that is this big, you better really like the person sitting next to you, because you're going to be sitting right next to them.
Of interior appointments. Materials are rich, subdued, and very appealing. The leather is soft and the wood burled. In addition, dual airbags protect driver and front passenger. The front bucket seats use European-style pictograph controls for a multitude of adjustments.
I would say, since I've driven it, as a person who's 6'5", the one thing I would have preferred was a little more thigh support for the cushions to be a little bit longer.
Plus 2 additional ones for lumbar support. Yet we think it's odd that the seatbelts are not height adjustable. Aurora's very driver-oriented cockpit places a variety of user-friendly controls within easy reach, including outside mirrors, cruise control, and headlights, plus redundant radio and climate controls on the steering wheel. Gauges are large, legible analog units. Plus, there's an oil life readout.
It's funny, but my mother-in-law's climate control unit and the trip control unit with the buttons failed, and I had to get parts for it. And I'll tell you later about how hard it is to get parts for these cars and why I think so.
Part of the trip computer. Remote release buttons for the trunk and fuel filler door aren't buried as on most cars. The automatic climate control uses a convenient mixture of large home...
Again, this climate control unit that you see him using right now, I've actually had to replace that. I had to take the dash apart to get that to come out and put a new one in.
Stereo-style knobs and digital keypads, and includes a separate temperature control for the front passenger. Music is provided by an all-new 7-speaker Delco Bose system that has cassette and CD capability standard. Likewise, the console's 2 pop-out cup holders.
Okay, this is kind of a joke. You look at these cup holders that are only big enough for an aluminum can. Of course, people tried to stuff bigger drink cups and things from a 7-Eleven or a Quick Trip in these cup holders, and they're always broken. No matter where you go to find an Aurora for parts, they're broken.
The rear bench seat is supremely comfortable.
This is America. We don't do small drinks.
And features 2 more cup holders, along with armrest storage and even a small pass-through to the trunk, which has a substantial 16.1 cubic feet of flat, deep storage.
It's a really big trunk, I will say that, but it's hindered by the fact that you can't lower the rear seats down. And I think that might be because when they talk about it being the most rigid car that GM ever built, I think having the rear seats stationary is part of what did that.
Although the opening is small and the lip a bit high. Substantial is also how Aurora feels on the road. Quiet too, registering an excellent 65 decibel.
65 decibels is really quiet. That's actually quieter than a Volvo 850, there's something to be said about that.
Interior noise level. The EPA rates fuel economy at 17 city and 24 highway. In driving several Auroras under varying conditions, we averaged a fine 22 miles per gallon.
I've driven her Aurora on some short trips, meaning like maybe 2 hours away, 2 hours back, and it does seem kind of thirsty. I don't know how they got 22. I'm thinking that we got less than that.
And the bottom line for this impressive package, the extremely well-equipped Aurora's base price is a most reasonable $31,370. There are only 6 options, and our test car had just one, the $395 performance tire upgrade, bringing the sticker to $31,765. Yes, we think Aurora is a great luxury car.
I'd have to say that that's a pretty good price. I think that, of course, if you looked at BMW or Mercedes at this time, they would have been in the 50s and 60s. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure.
Our value, and we're not alone. Automobile Magazine said about Aurora, and you can have all this wonderfulness at a price that undercuts the big V8 Japanese luxury sedans by up to $18,000. Imagine that. And few would have imagined that just a short time ago. But the reality of Aurora signals that venerable Oldsmobile can indeed compete in today's world. It is a superior car, and Aurora gives all fans of American cars something to glow about.
Okay, my take on the Aurora. Well, I'll say this. The Aurora had 2 generations. This was the first generation Aurora. Then they made another Aurora that really didn't stand out quite as much, and it was smaller, and you could get it with a 6-cylinder or the V8. These first generation Auroras, I don't know if it was price point or maybe people who were looking for a luxury car bought something else at the time, but you don't see many of these on the road. The quality, I would say, the interior was pretty good. The body fitment and body panels were pretty good, but another reason it might not have lived as long as other cars is that North Star motor. The North Star motors were plagued with problems, and that could have retired a lot of these cars early. In Newton, Iowa, when I go to the salvage yard, there's a white one that's in there, and I get parts for it routinely. Like I said, I've had to replace the climate controls, I've had to replace the stereo. Under the dash, there is a unit that controls the blend doors, which allows both sides to have different temperatures. Well, for a while there, the one underneath the passenger side was bad, which caused my mother-in-law's side of the car to just be cold all the time, even in the wintertime. I couldn't find one on the internet, and luckily it was really hard. Sometimes you have to have somebody who knows something to find parts for this car. I realized that GM put that same part in Buick Roadmasters and Cadillac STSs, so I managed to get one out of a Buick and I got that fixed. I would say that of all the cars my father-in-law owns, this one is the one, even more than the Jaguar XJ8 that he has, this one's more of a headache, and it is just because I try to find parts for it and there's none. And again, I really do believe it's probably because of this engine that the cars were retired early. But my mother-in-law, who now unfortunately is suffering from dementia, can't drive. But I'll tell you what, we don't get rid of that car because when the garage door opens up, there's a few things that she always remembers. She remembers her husband's name and her kids' names, and she remembers that she has that Aurora. She doesn't remember when the door's closed, but if you open it up, if it wasn't there, everybody would pay that price because she loved that car. Well, if you know somebody who had an Aurora or you had an Aurora, put it down in the comments. And just remember, if you have a car that you really liked and I can find it in a retro review, I'll do my review as well. Well, see you later, guys.